Hi, I'm Hannah Durden and you're listening to the Outdoors Group podcast. This podcast is a call to arms to get children and young people outside again. It's your one-stop shop for all things outdoor, child, young person and education related. Thanks for tuning in. We all know that being in nature calms us down and that we feel happier after time spent outside. But I was really keen to explore this further and to dive down into why being outdoors is so beneficial to our well-being. So today I'm joined by Pete Shepherd and Rowan Pring. Pete's the welfare officer at the Outdoors Group and Rowan is a recently qualified counsellor with a background of emotional intelligence in children and a love of the outdoors. Thanks for joining me today, guys.
No problem.
It's good to be here.
So I think we'll just dive straight in and see if you guys can... This is quite a general question. Why is being outside so good for us?
Do you want to go first, Pete?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. But, well, first of all, being outside is just good because it's outside. I think being outside allows us to connect with the authentic, with the real, because it's not artificial, it's natural. It's we can see it, we can smell it.
Yeah.
In a sense, I guess, it kind of helps us to experience life through our senses. Our touch, sight, taste and all the others. It allows us to just get that sense that, yeah, I'm alive, I'm here in this moment, and this moment is special because I make it special.
That's a lovely answer.
Really beautiful. Yeah. I think I'd just add to that with the physical interaction of nature with our bodies. So some research has been done about phytoncides, which are a natural oil that trees release and plants release. Okay. It's part of their immune system.
So they're called phytocides?
Phytoncides.
Okay.
Yeah. So they release these oils to protect them from infection and certain bacteria and insects and things. And when we are around trees and plants, we breathe these phytoncides in and they improve our immunity. They actually boost our immunity. Yeah. So the density of the phytoncides depends on the type of tree and the time of year. Certainly when it's warmer, it's increased density. And also there's microbes in soil that do a similar thing. So when we breathe them in or ingest them through eating, obviously vegetables, things from the soil, it increases our immunity. And there's been research done that increased immunity boosts our mood and helps us feel happier.
Yes, I was going to say, I've heard about the microbes in the soil before. We talk about like letting kids get their hands muddy, don't we, and how actually it's really good for their physical health to be muddy. But I've not heard about the tree oils before, so that's really amazing. Do you think that's partly why like they do the kind of, what's it called, the forest bathing in Japan? Do you think they kind of knew about that, or do you think that's something different? I can't remember what it's called,
Shinrin-yoku? Yeah, no, it is definitely linked, and some of the research into the phytoncides came from that.
Oh, okay.
But absolutely, and like Pete said, that practice of forest bathing is using all the senses and really just delving in and taking that time. Sometimes it can take 3 hours to walk a mile because it's not about kind of doing it quickly, it's about immersing yourself.
It's the slowest mile ever.
Yeah.
But yeah, so because you're stopping presumably in the forest bathing.
Yeah.
And people are now prescribing that, aren't they? Specifically in Japan. Do you know they are in England as well?
Not that I'm aware.
No. Maybe it'll come.
No. Yeah.
Maybe it'll come. Not everyone is lucky enough obviously we live in Devon, where we've got the countryside and the coast within striking distance of the house, or most of our houses, but not everyone is in this situation. Do you think you can still get kind of these beneficial outcomes from being outdoors in suburban spaces? Do you think just taking away the walls and getting outside is enough?
Absolutely. We live so much of our lives in artificiality, with lights, with textures, with being inside. It creates a sense of a barrier. But when we're outside, even if we're just outside in an urban area, we're feeling the wind in our faces. We are hearing birdsong. We are sensing different textures. We're hearing the flutter of the leaves in the trees. All of these things, I think, really help us to reconnect with the moment, reconnect with the here and now moment, so that we are transcending that artificiality, but we're actually connecting with something which is more real, is more adept at connecting with our true self.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree. I think that, and as you said, with the wind in your face and things, you can get that inside. You open a window and you get a breeze coming through and you're immediately reminded of nature
Yes.
and the seasons and the weather. And I think if you're not lucky enough to live near a forest or a moor or a beach, you can bring that inside. You know, houseplants, repotting houseplants
Yes.
gets your hands in the soil.
Oh, that's true.
Window boxes, absolutely.
Yeah, even
Yeah, small
pictures.
space gardening. I was just about to say, because in our first podcast, Chev had mentioned about research that had shown in hospital beds that even the sight of a natural landscape could improve someone's well-being as they recovered, which is amazing, isn't it? Just to see a picture of landscapes.
It's extraordinary. I think as well it's sometimes, it might sound a bit strange, but get a box, get an old, washing up bowl and get some soil from somewhere, go to, or get some sand and put your feet in it, close your eyes, play some music on your TV of the sea, if you really are living in a very urban area, you can still access nature like that, and kind of create that indoor experience for yourself by thinking out the box a little bit.
I think anything which allows us to move away from the artificiality is really, really beneficial, both to mind, body and soul. I think we since the Industrial Revolution, we've moved indoors. If we think of our young people today, screen time is a massive thing. All of these things create a barrier to immersing ourselves in kind of the natural rhythm and cycle of life. So anything that helps us to reconnect, make that connection renewed, is really beneficial.
Yeah. I hadn't even thought about, as you guys say, houseplants and things, how that could help you connect to it. Because I think we get a bit carried away in Devon sometimes because it's so easily accessible.
It's on the doorstep.
Yes, yeah. So it's good to think about if you're in a city how you do it, but there's obviously lots of ways you can still access it.
Yeah.
Well, that's awesome. Pete, I'm going to come to you. At the moment, you're working primarily with adults, and I know that you meet people when you're working with them in a variety of different spots, and obviously we're an outdoor education company, so it's often outdoors, but I know sometimes it's not. Do you find a difference in your sessions when they're based outside rather than indoors? And I guess kind of just, if so, why do you think that is?
Yeah. Great question. And yes, there's a huge difference.
Okay.
So I'm very fortunate. I've got my own counselling room, which I use for sessions where you have a more traditional setting. The environment consists of my chair, of a sofa, there's artificial light, there's water, which comes from a glass, very artificial. I also work, as you say, in this context, in the environments of being outside. So there's opportunities both to sit around the campfire or just sit on a log and looking at the vista before us, or go for walks in the woods. And those two environments are so incredibly different. They're different both in terms of the therapeutic process, but they're also different in terms of enabling an individual client to really progress authentically with their mobility. So, for example, I noticed very clearly that being outside is a change of pace to the session. The sessions are a lot slower.
Yes.
They're far more organic in their rhythm, which is really, really cool. Being outside also is less confrontational. So if you can imagine the scene, there am I in my counselling room, I'm sitting opposite someone. For the first session, they don't know where to put their eyes.
No.
Do they look at me, do they look past me, do they look at the wall, the floor? Very confrontational, very awkward, because there's just space between us.
And you have to be really comfortable with someone to open up.
Absolutely.
Vulnerably and look at them at the same time.
That's right, you're building that relationship of trust. And so in its early stages, it can be quite difficult. Outside, it's just a different context.
Yeah.
Outside, it's less confrontational because there's more going on. You've got birdsong, you've got breeze. Recently, we've had a lot of rain, and that has another impact, a really positive impact often in terms of the counselling process.
Okay.
So interesting.
So all of these things chip away at that confrontational approach where it's very one-on-one. So it's not one-on-one as much as one-on-one with all of the nature that's going on around us. So that's really, really useful. It also provides for the counsellor a lot more opportunity. So, for example, in a counselling room, to ask the question, what do you smell? What do you see? It's very difficult to ask when you're in an enclosed space, but there's not a lot to smell and there's not really a lot to see. But outside, what are your senses telling you about the here and now moment? What are you seeing? What are you experiencing? What does that make you wonder? What does that make you consider? And also, nature's full of metaphors, which are really useful to help clients really explain how they feel. So, for example, they can see a robin on their own. Robin just perches on the edge of a log on their own. And they perceive that robin's on their own. They can say, yeah, I feel a bit like that robin. Feels like I'm a bit isolated, a bit on my own, do my own thing, a bit disconnected from others. So the outside environment provides all of those metaphors, which are really, really useful. And I love metaphors. But for me, it's a godsend as a counsellor. For me, the biggest change is in that sense of vulnerability. I find, in my experience, that being outside enables people to feel far more vulnerable and be open and honest about their vulnerability than being inside. So in the counselling room, it's warm, I'm comfortable, I'm sitting on a nice sofa, I've got a cushion on my knees, making me feel safe. It's just a nice, safe space. Where outside could be a safe space, but it's less comfortable. You've got the wind, you've got the rain, it's damp, maybe it's a bit cold. You've got those things which really have a huge impact in helping a client feel that they can be more honest.
They can be uncomfortable,
being uncomfortable is okay.
Yeah.
It's an okay space to be.
That. Yeah.
And their openness, I've found, openness outside is we come to that point quicker than inside, because inside you have to really build up that working alliance of trust.
Do you think the small talk dissipates quicker outside then?
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. Very much so. And also, and I think something else I noticed, which is quite interesting. I'm sure Rowan will know from her counselling practice. All clients are different, and some clients need a long time to really begin to peel back and really bring into the room what's really going on for them. When you're outside, it's cold and it's wet, there's a real quickness to say, look, I just want to be honest, this is what's going on for me.
I hadn't thought about that. So quite practically, you can go, I'm quite wet, this is why I've wanted to talk to you.
Yeah, so it really does. The elements do cause people to really come to the point often, because it's kind of a prompt that they just really need to get to the heart of why they're there, why they've engaged me in that conversation.
Yeah.
So all in all, outside therapy I find is really creative, and in many ways opens up far more opportunities for personal growth for clients than being indoors.
So if you have the choice, you'll always suggest an outdoor meet?
Always.
Yeah.
Always. And of course, the other part of being outside is it's always different.
Yeah.
So even if you go to the same space, you sit on the same log, or you go for the same walk in the same coppice or woods, the experience is different.
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, I was in Totnes yesterday morning and the birds were singing and it was very dry and everything was crunching under feet. And then today it was soaking wet, not a bird in sight, everyone falling over in the mud.
Absolutely.
24 hours, so different.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
that change in season, that change in environment is really supportive of the client's change. So a client can then replicate that and see that as nature changes, they can also experience and accept that change in them. And the great thing also about outside is we have this notion, don't we, that summer is sun, winter is cold. The beauty of summer, when you have a rainy day, it informs a client that actually even on a summer's day, it can be wet.
Yeah.
Which kind of means that it's okay that it's wet. So if it's okay it's wet, then for me I can say it's okay if today I'm not feeling it.
Yeah.
Do you know what, that's so profound, because I think there's so much pressure, isn't there, to kind of shift your mood with the seasons. I certainly feel it in the spring and summer. There's this pressure to be happy, to be sociable.
Vitamin D's out,
that why aren't you feeling happy? Why aren't you wanting to go out and socialise? So that I'd never thought of that. I think that's so lovely, that permission that even when it's sunny and you're supposed to be happy, sociable, bubbly, full of energy, maybe you're not, and that's okay, because nothing's like that permanent.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's a really nice take on it. Yeah.
I wonder as well, can I just ask
something? Yeah, of course you can, yes.
I'm really intrigued whether you come across challenges. For example, you said about if it's raining, and I'm thinking about, in the counselling room, it's quite quiet and you're sat relatively close. have you found in natural environments you've kind of had to not obviously shout at your client, but are there points where you're both raising your voice and that feels quite strange in the dynamic because of noises around?
Yeah. So part of that is bound up in the contract that you have with the client. So as you know, Rowan, that contract's really important because it kind of provides the foundation for therapeutic work to happen. So when I first meet a member of staff or a client outside, we then start to kind of talk about, the kind of nuts and bolts. So are we in a place which is confidential? So are we in a place where there are other members of staff or there are other dog walkers around? Because that will have an implication for levels of honesty and disclosure. Elements, if it's chucking it down with rain, is there places where we can gain cover which are confidential? So if we're going for a walk and it's not raining when we start, but the rain comes, is that the termination of our walk, of our therapy, or are we looking at actually incorporating into that walk some dry space where we can use? So all of these things are very much part of that contracting process, so that when those challenges arise, there's that agreed agreement with the client to know what to do. The big one, as I say, is confidentiality, because you don't want people to have to shout, but at the same time, you want to be mindful that it's important to hear. So that really impacts the time and place. When I contract with clients, I'm very mindful of light. So I want them to feel safe. I want to be safe. So light's a big thing. So winter time, I wouldn't be meeting someone for therapy, 3:00 in the afternoon in the winter months, because it gets dark very quickly. So taking all of those things into account, working with the outside environment, the elements, which really supports the client in the work they want to do.
Do you find as well that, I'm thinking of comparing it to that sitting in the counselling room, very much so I found from personal experiences and with clients, it's very much their issues are in the hands of the therapist, in terms of the therapist is keeping track of the time, they're kind of keeping track of, okay, we're nearly at the hour, so let's not ask any really searching questions that might leave the client feeling upset when they leave. Do you find that being outside, because there's so many variables, actually it empowers the client to be more mindful of that themselves and kind of develop that self-management of going, well, it could start raining any minute or when it might need to leave, so there's less pressure on the therapist and more empowered on the client to manage that internally?
That's really insightful. The whole dynamic changes when you're from a controlled environment in a counselling room to being outside. You're so right, Rowan. So in my counselling room, I've got a clock that the client sees and a clock that I see, but they never look at the clock. No. On my counselling wall, it's this massive clock, but I never see it. But I've got the clock opposite them, so I can see the time. Yeah. Outside, part of the contracting is you both hold the time. So there's a real shift in ownership of that time, of ownership of the time that we're going to take, but also of the journey that we're going to go. So for walking, and it's a physical journey,
you need to make sure you've got time to get back.
Absolutely, and there's a real sense of sharing that responsibility, which I really enjoy. I really enjoy being in the counselling room. The artificialness of that, as you will know, though, when you're in session, particularly if a client right at the end of the session begins then to drop that one thing that they've been holding or sitting on, and you've got 5 minutes to go. There's that sense of,
what do I do now?
Where do I go? Do we allow that to continue, or do we part that for another session? It's always a difficulty. Whereas that doesn't happen as much, I've noticed, outside, because you both own the time and the space.
So interesting.
I think we'll take it to thinking about children a little bit as well now. So, Ro, obviously you've worked with children who are struggling with trauma and kind of behavioural issues and sensory challenges. In your experience, how does being outside help them to kind of regulate and to process and work through their issues?
I think for me there's two really key areas. I think it's looking at the child themselves and how it benefits them, and looking at the person working with them and how nature supports them.
Yeah.
Because I've been a youth worker for 10 years now, working with special needs and autism and behavioural issues and mental health in young people. And I notice in myself when a young person is, we call dysregulating, as in, losing control of their own emotions.
A parent might say having a meltdown.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought I'd add a more colloquial term for those listening. Dysregulation.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I notice in myself, I get stressed.
Yeah.
I start to tense up. My heart rate starts to go. And when you are in a confined space like a classroom, you instantly, as a key worker, as someone with that child, that young person, you feel trapped because you're looking around going, they clearly need space.
Yes.
There is no space. There's a closed door. There's lots of tables and chairs. How do I judge? Either do I come alongside them and try and calm them down? Do I try and get them out? If so, where to? A corridor that's still confined.
Yeah.
So I think that really being outside allows you as the worker that space and to take away that pressure, and then through in being calmer yourself, that child can co-regulate from you, and they see and pick up on your sense of calm, and it allows them to feel calmer and safer, because I think children do pick up when adults are stressed. They're very perceptive. You pick up on all the micro expressions of your eyes, your tone of voice, any tension, slightly raised shoulders. And that can exacerbate it without meaning to. You're not meaning to, you're trying to think of how to keep the situation safe. But I've certainly noticed working outside that it allows me as a worker to maintain that calm and find that space of calm.
And if you're calmer, then the child knows they've got that safe person with them.
Absolutely. And I think the second key area is nature and the outdoors is non-judgmental. There is no judgment. So you take a child into a classroom or a young person into a classroom, and there's just there's implicit judgment everywhere of how you should be, what you should be doing, what things should look like, how you should dress, comparing yourselves to others, comparing yourselves to pictures on the wall, or not feeling comfortable in a certain environment because maybe it's very neat and tidy and everything's very structured, but their home life isn't like that, so they feel out of place. They don't feel like they belong in this strange environment. Whereas when you take a young person outside, it's levelling for everyone. There is no right and wrong. You pick up a stick. It's not, it can be a cricket bat. It can be a stirring stick for a potion. It can be a wand. It can be a fishing rod. There's no right and wrong.
Yeah.
So it allows children to develop their identity and creativity in an unconfined way, which allows them to then feel more confident in their own identity and who they are, rather than feeling like, well, I'm doing well, or I'm ticking these boxes, or I'm using this tool or this toy in the right way. It's complete freedom to get in touch with themselves, and then ultimately that allows them to be more in touch with how they're feeling and take the space to process emotions if they need to.
And I guess also from a practical point of view, outdoors there's more opportunity to be physical, right? And to be loud and to move around more, because you're not going to disturb other people within the classroom or in the house. Or you're not going to break furniture or,
Absolutely, everything. I think, we've all been in that position where you're in, a learning environment inside, and even moving in your chair can sometimes feel like, I'm making loads of noise and disrupting people, and you just don't have that because, one, you've got this constant background, as Pete mentioned earlier, of the birds and the breeze and the leaves, which is calming, but also it takes away from kind of the spotlight being on you if you move or you say something or you want to ask a question. Children can ask questions and feel more protected by this noise around them, rather than have to whisper to someone sat next to them in a quiet classroom, worried that someone's going to hear that they're asking for help or that kind of thing. Or you can go much further away from a group to take time alone, or
if you need to, or if you've got a lot of energy, it's easy to expel it a bit more quickly outdoors.
Absolutely.
I think when I first had my eldest, my mum's only parenting advice she gave me was make sure you take the children outside once a day. And I thought at the time when I had this tiny baby, what are you talking about? But it's been the most invaluable advice ever. And even when they were babies and toddlers, it was even more for me than them. Like, as you say, that kind of space to breathe and calm down and stuff. But yeah, it's the best advice ever. Just get them outside, even if it's a walk around the block once a day. There's something about it. It's magical, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we've talked a lot about kind of, well, in regards to you guys being counsellors and supporting people in a therapeutic way. But have either of you got any kind of more general observations or thoughts about the importance of being outdoors for just either a child or an adult's mental health, and how we can kind of incorporate positive habits for this into our day-to-day lives in like a non-therapeutic kind of, like, for someone that's not got a counsellor, but, you know, how they can use the outdoors to support their well-being.
Do you want to go?
Yeah, one of the things that we have lost through this digital age, we've lost that connection with the natural rhythms of the creative world. We've just lost that. We've insulated ourselves with screens, and we all live now via the diary.
Yes.
So the diary sets the rhythm, the diary sets the pace, the diary sets our working day and our social day. So we go back a couple of centuries where people they got up with the sun, they went to bed when the sun went down. They worked in harmony with their environment, and because they were doing that, their life was far more in balance. So we have in a sense given that balance away because we live to an artificial set of rhythms.
Yes.
And the great irony of all of this is that we know, quintessentially, we know it doesn't work.
Yes.
We know it doesn't feel right. We talk about the rat race. We talk about making it to the weekend. We talk about trying to self-soothe with other things to make the monotony of day-to-day living bearable. So we know it doesn't really work for us in terms of our well-being, and yet we perpetuate the same cycle.
Yeah.
And then, of course, when we retired, traditionally, what did we do? We gave someone a clock or a watch.
Yes.
When they retired. What's that all about?
Oh, I've not even thought about that. But you're right, it is. It's a clock, isn't it, when you leave?
What's that all about? So being outside has two major benefits. One of the things it does, it allows us to create that balance again with what it means to be alive in the here and now.
Yes.
So all too often we are either consumed by anxiety from the past or fears of the future. We don't actually inhabit the now moment. Being outside strips us of the past and the future and allows us just to inhabit the now moment.
Yeah.
That's really important. It sounds so obvious and so easy to do, but it's so hard to do because our minds are seldom in connection with our physicality. So our physicality is here, but our heads are elsewhere. We're thinking about that meeting, that conversation, that shopping list, or that thing that needs to be done.
I call it an endless to-do list.
Absolutely.
Ticking away at the back of your head.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So there is a disconnect between the physical and the psychological. Being outside reconnects those in harmony. It allows us just to be alive, just to feel as though we're alive. And when we think about it, we just have this one go at this thing called life.
Yes.
just one go. It's not like we have a dry run and then get to 80 and say, fantastic, I've learned how to do it now. When we go back to being a babe, get it right the second time. We don't have that option. So it's about actually, in a way, stripping away that artificiality, getting back into grounding ourselves, back into those natural rhythms. The rhythms of the day, of the month, of the seasons. It's really important that we do that. We can only do that by grounding ourselves back in the open environment. But the second thing I think it does for us, it enables us to have a better understanding of who we are. So today in our digital age, we live by persona. So I have a Facebook persona, an Instagram persona, a LinkedIn persona, all these different personas that reflect something of me. But when I'm outside, it's just me.
Yeah.
It's the real me. It's the authentic me. The child can come out if he wants to and can play poo sticks on the stream. The child can come out who wonders at the mushroom, wonders at its texture, wonders at its beauty, wonders at its colour, and just the absurdity of why is that mushroom growing in that particular place.
Yes.
So we can reconnect with our inner child, we can reconnect with our inner adult in a way which we can't in the artificial world.
No.
And so being outside when that sense of balance comes into play, and also we come into our authentic selves, the byproduct of that is that our well-being is far more heightened. So if my well-being is impacted for the better, and I become the best version of who I am, then everybody in my world has the benefit of that.
Yeah.
So everybody in my world gets the best version of me. So it means that when I'm in stressful situations, I'm not kicking off. It means that the best version of me is handling that situation, rather than the tired, the overworked, the stressed version of me who's more likely to kick off.
Yeah.
Because I don't have the resilience
So
or the
it's a
capacity.
win-win, really.
It is a win-win.
Because you're happier in yourself, and then those around you are happier because you're
absolutely.
happy.
And their heightened well-being because of my well-being, then I receive back.
Yes.
Which kind of, in a sense, adds value to and affirms my well-being. So it is. It's a complete win-win. And if we need any more evidence of this, all we need to do is to go to places like the Amazon, or to go into parts of Africa where you have communities who have not embraced the digital age, but have embraced the agricultural, being outside. They've embraced what it means to be in the here and now moment. On one level, they don't have much. They don't have the cars and the iPads and the iPhones and all of the things that we would talk about as being progress and success.
But they've actually got everything.
But in terms of well-being, they've got everything.
Yeah.
They've got everything. So I know what I would sooner have.
Yeah.
If I was given the choice.
Have you got anything to add?
Yeah, I think just that really, and just the being outdoors. There's a theory called attention restoration theory by Stephen and Rachel Kaplan, psychologists, who they talk about these urban environments, these built-up environments, as Pete said, so artificial, and it's so taxing on our attention, because our attention is drawn to everything, all the different artificial lights. There's so much flashing lights. If you think about you watching TV, there's lots of adverts that come up, or there's artificial colours and shapes all around us, and sounds, that you don't hear in nature, and it's incredibly taxing and mentally draining.
Yeah.
So then they talk about going into nature where you have, it's called soft fascination, where it's an environment that holds your attention well enough that you're not kind of feeling bored or like you need to find other stimulation, but it's not taxing you, it's not overstimulating you. And it's an environment that feels familiar to all of us, because if you've been to one beach, you know what to expect of a beach.
Yeah.
So then you could go to any beach and know that there's the sand, there might be certain sounds, there's the sound of the sea. So it's not taxing your attention as much. Whereas if you could go into 5 different buildings in a city, and you'd be so alert because they've all got different sounds, different expectations, different people in them, different colours. So I think that's something that nature can really do. You can feel at home in nature and familiar with nature wherever you go, because trees are trees, the beach is the beach, the moors are the moors. Even if you go to different ones, they've all got beauty in their own right, but they feel familiar enough that you feel safe and you feel at home and you feel comfortable with that environment. And I think one thing I would just say, if people are struggling to think about, some people might say, I'm not outdoorsy, and they have a picture in their head of you have to be able to go out in all weathers and this, that and the other.
Walking boots and full waterproof.
Yeah, and people might say, I can't afford that, or I don't have access to that. And I think it's going back to, like we said, about how you can bring nature in. And I think a big part of that is starting with how you view nature, using those metaphors, rather than looking outside saying what a miserable day because it's raining, trying to internally use neutral language and just say it's raining. That's not bad or good. It is a weather. I could choose to go out in it if I have a coat and boots. If I don't have those, I'll stay in and do something else. But rather than labelling it as bad or good, it just is. And then that links back to how Pete said, that kind of acceptance of those cycles and those ups and downs that we experience internally. It's not making it a positive or a negative. It's just accepting and saying I could choose to go out in this weather, or I could choose to stay in. The same as the flip side of if it's really sunny, not putting pressure on yourself to go out if you're exhausted and what you need that day is to stay in and rest and recharge your battery. Going, it's a sunny day, I could go out and do this, but I could also stay in. So kind of redressing that balance of the internal and external psychologically and physically being outside and inside.
Yeah. That's so true, because I do that in the summer. I think, it's a gorgeous day, we should be outside, and kind of sometimes you force yourself to go out, and then you have a miserable day and you think, why did I do that?
Yeah.
Just because it's sunny.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's something there, isn't there, about knowing yourself
Yeah.
and knowing what is of value and
Yeah.
what's not of value.
And what your body needs.
Absolutely, but there's also that growing in awareness of when we are in denial or withdrawal.
Yeah.
So we need to be careful that we don't go to the two ends of that spectrum. One is pushing ourselves beyond breaking, when that's not what we need. But the other end is the denial. It may do me good, but I'm going to say that it's not going to do me good because I can't be bothered.
Yes.
So it's kind of getting that sense of really knowing self and knowing what I need, and sometimes allowing ourselves to be quite soft and allowing ourselves to be quite hard. And I guess that's what we learn about ourselves
Yeah.
as we go on. But what you say, Rowan, is spot on, I think. Yeah.
I think linking to that is not putting pressure on yourself to have this all or nothing. Like you say, you don't want to be either end of the spectrum. So if if it's too much to think about going for, a 2-hour walk in the woods, just go and sit in the woods for 20 minutes. You don't have to be moving if you haven't got that energy. Or, if you cycle or drive somewhere and sit in nature if it's not right on your doorstep.
Yeah.
Finding kind of middle ground ways, or saying,
good.
well, if I can't walk all the way here, maybe I just walk around the block and I just tune into whether I can hear the birds, or whether it's nighttime and I can hear a fox or whatever
the
it
stars
is.
Are out.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool.
Just bringing it down, not having this all or nothing. I've got to go right out and do a whole day up on the moors and take a packed lunch and hike for hours.
Yeah.
You can bring that back and go, like your mum's advice, just do a little bit every day.
Yes.
Have something, touch the plants in your house, feel their leaves,
Yes.
touch the earth, run your hands under water for a bit longer when you're washing your hands.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Just something in your day that connects you to nature, that then connects you to the here and now, like you say, Pete.
Wonderful. I think there's also something to be said for the outdoors giving us a better context of who we are. So, for example, sometimes we can think that our problems are so big, they're insurmountable, that our problems are just so consuming that there is I don't know where to go with it. And if you lay down with a client at night and you see the stars, and Devon, we're very fortunate, we don't have a lot of red light pollution, and you're able to see the stars, just the immensity of them.
Yeah.
It can help us form a better sense of context.
Yeah.
Not that we minimise or normalise the issues we face, but allows us to take a breath.
Yeah.
To recognise that in this huge thing called the creative world, that no matter what I feel or how I feel it, the stars are still shining.
The stars still shining, yeah.
The tide's still coming in.
Yeah.
The buds on the trees are still coming through.
Yeah.
The leaves will be there. It can really help us to kind of get a stronger sense of this issue that I'm facing. As much as it seems like a dead end, a cul-de-sac even, that actually, no, with help, support, and my sense of wanting to look at that, I can see change.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. Really lovely place to kind of draw our... I can't think of the word. draw to a close. But before I do, well, firstly, thanks for coming, guys. But I've been asking everyone these last 3 questions just quickly before we go. So I don't know who wants to go first, but my first question is, how do you relax?
Should I go?
Right, you go first.
I relax by sea swimming, bodyboarding, and if I haven't got the energy for those things, then art journaling, so collaging and art journaling.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Car going past. Pete, how about you?
Well, when you say sea swimming, I see swimmers. Does that kind of sea swimming?
Yes, it does.
So I see swimmers swimming in Bew Seapool, but my faith in Jesus helps me to relax. My faith in Jesus helps me to kind of get a greater sense of who I am, and not to take me too seriously, which is fantastic. I'm a great reader. I love reading.
Yeah.
So I find that really helpful. Podcasts. I'm into podcasts.
Yeah.
But I guess the biggest thing would be comedy.
Comedy.
I find there's a real value in laughter, so I try, and every day, find something that makes me laugh.
And that's awesome.
And I find that really, really, even if it's a learner's joke. Can I just tell you a learner's joke that they told me the other day?
Yes, go for it.
It tickled me. I'm still laughing. Why did the loo roll down the hill?
I don't know.
Because he wanted to get to the bottom. That was one of our learners. I thought that was inspiring.
That's fantastic. And so, Ro, what are you reading or listening to right now?
Yeah, just quickly, sorry, you saying that reminds me of an E.E. Cummings quote. He said, "The most wasted of all days is one without laughter."
Wow.
Which is one of my favourite quotes.
That's a lovely quote.
It's a good quote.
Yeah. True.
I like that.
So I'm reading a book called Grayson by Lynn Cox, she's a phenomenal sea swimmer and has loads of records for sea swimming, and it's a true story about when she was 17 and she was doing her normal workout out in the bay near her home, swimming lengths between a pier and a jetty, and a baby grey whale started following her. It had lost its mother, and she swam with it around the coast to try and find the mother.
That's amazing.
It's extraordinary.
Is it true
It's a true story.
That's amazing.
So it's Grayson, Grayson by Lynn Cox.
Wow.
It's really
amazing.
It's very it's quite simply written.
Yeah.
But it's very sort of graphically written of her experience of the sea and the textures and the senses that she experiences it being in the sea, and
that sounds amazing.
So it's worth a read.
Oh, awesome.
Sounds fantastic. Yeah.
How about you, Pete?
Well, I've got a couple of books on the go. I always normally have 2 or 3 on the go. So I've got one of them I'm into at the moment is Enjoying God by Tim Chester, which is really good. It's kind of a progressive way of what's this faith thing all about, and how can you really make it a part of your everyday life, which is brilliant. And I'm also reading a book by Neil Oliver, which my eldest son gave me for Christmas, called The Story of the World in 100 Moments.
Okay.
Which is fascinating. It really is interesting.
That sounds really interesting as well.
Yeah,
awesome. Check both of those out.
Really interesting.
And finally, Ro, why is being outdoors important to you?
I think that's such a huge question. I think I would probably describe it as when I am in nature, I just have a very strong sense of there's nowhere else I need to be.
Yeah.
You know, when you're around a friend sometimes and you're looking at the time, you think I'm having a lovely time chatting, but I've got to get the shopping done, I've got to do this, I've got to do that, or even if I'm enjoying things or sat at home relaxing, you know, there always feels like I could be somewhere else or could be doing something else, or, you know, occasionally that little voice comes in and says, you know, oh, other people are doing this, maybe you should be doing something to, you know, do the same.
Yeah.
And I never feel like that in nature, where whenever I'm, you know, in the woods or at the sea, I just feel there's nowhere else I need to be.
Yeah.
This is home.
That's a lovely answer. How about you, Pete?
I think for me it brings out my inner child.
Okay.
So being outside allows me to just really admire the beauty.
Yeah.
Just admire the beauty, that wonder that beauty can give you when you're young and you see a sunset, or you see the formation of a leaf, or you see animals. It's like wow. So it's the wow factor. I think the second thing, it helps me to always pose the questions.
Yeah.
It allows me to be inquisitive, and I love the inquisitive nature of being outside, particularly with trees. I find trees fascinating. You know, why do trees take the shape they do?
I love it. Yeah, when you go somewhere and they're windswept and they're all
absolutely
at funny angles,
absolutely
thrown against the wind. Yeah.
So it allows me to just really embrace that wow factor of the beauty that's around us, and then also the questions. It just fills my mind with that inquisitive nature, which I don't find in anywhere other environment other than being outside.
Lovely. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, guys. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did too.
Thank you. It's been good.
Yeah, learned a lot.
Yeah, thank you for your time out of your busy day.
Thanks for inviting us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you to Pete and for Rowan for joining us today. And I hope that those of you listening enjoyed that as much as I did. And thanks again for tuning in. I hope that you'll come back in 2 weeks' time for our next one. And in the meantime, if you could tell your friends about the podcast, If you could rate it, like it, subscribe, do all those things so that more people can find us, that'd be great. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you soon.